Hey mamas, welcome back to Called and Rooted Christian Moms. I'm so glad that you joined us today. We're going to be beginning a new series called Roots. But before we jump into today's episode, I wanted to introduce to you what we'll be actually talking about. Over the next few weeks, we're going to dig beneath the surface and examine the things that quietly shape our lives. Because if we only focus on the fruit, we'll miss the root. Today we're beginning with a root that many of us wear like a badge of honor: busyness. Welcome to Called and Rooted Christian Moms. I'm Darby, a wife, mama to three, teacher, and believer in Jesus Christ. I've learned that to build a God-centered home, we must first become rooted in Christ ourselves. So if you're ready for simple biblical teachings that bring peace, connection, and proximity to Christ in everyday motherhood, this podcast is for you. Whether you're folding laundry, doing dishes at the kitchen sink, or watching your babies play from the back porch, Christ is calling you into partnership with Him. Let's get rooted, Mama. Last week, I spoke on the verse Jeremiah 17, verse 7 through 8. But blessed is the one who trusts in the Lord, whose confidence is in Him. They will be like a tree planted by the water that sends out its roots by the stream. It does not fear when heat comes. Its leaves are always green. It has no worries in a year of drought, and it never fails to bear fruit. That's the kind of life we want to pursue as Christians, a life deeply rooted in Christ. Our confidence isn't found in others, achievement, or staying busy. It's found in Him alone. As we keep our eyes on Jesus through every season, He strengthens our roots, produces lasting fruit in our lives, and remains faithful when life feels dry and uncertain. The choices that we make and the way we choose to spend our time and days determine how deeply we'll be rooted and the kind of fruit our lives will produce. I'm going to make 3 points whenever we look at our lives and examining the busyness that follows. The first point is we need to recognize who we are in the season that we're in and be honest about the capacity that we can hold. I think that is one of the biggest reasons so many of us struggle to stay focused. We get caught up in our busy schedules trying to do everything for everyone. But Ecclesiastes reminds us that there is a time and season for everything. Becoming honest with yourself about what your current season can hold and what it can't is one of the most important parts of becoming rooted in Christ and not falling into the roots of busyness. Maybe this season looks like caring for a new baby, or maybe you're adjusting to a new job. Maybe you've been asked to serve at a church or join another Bible study. And none of those things are bad, but not every good opportunity is meant for every season. And there's a verse I think many of us have misunderstood at one point or another. I know that I have. 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 13. We often hear people say, God won't give you more than you can handle. But that's not exactly what the verse says. It's talking about temptation. And it reminds us that God is faithful and will always provide a way to endure temptation without sinning. Sometimes, though, we feel our calendars so full that we create burdens God never asked us to carry. God has numbered our days, but He has also given us wisdom and responsibility in how we spend them. There are responsibilities He calls us to bear, and there are commitments we choose to add ourselves. Learning the difference is part of living a rooted life. The thing God calls us to carry, He strengthens us for, and the things that we unnecessarily pile into our lives often leave us exhausted and distracted from what He's actually asked us to do. This is why even the simplest decisions should be prayed over. We don't just seek God for the big life-changing moments. We invite Him into our everyday choices. And when we do that, He faithfully guides our steps, orders our days, and helps us invest in our time in what matters most. When we pause to honestly assess where we are, we can make wiser decisions about what belongs on our calendar now and what can wait for a later season. And saying not right now isn't a lack of faith. It can actually be an act of wisdom. The next point that I want to make is learning to say no and being okay with it. This is something I've personally struggled with for most of my life. I've always been a yes person. Out of respect for others, I didn't want to hurt anyone's feelings or make them think that I didn't appreciate the invitation or the opportunity or the request. So my default answer was almost always yes. But over time, I've realized that every time I say yes to something, I'm also saying no to something else. Sometimes that no was to spend time with my family, and sometimes it was to rest. Sometimes it was to the work that God had actually called me to do. I've had to learn that saying no isn't selfish when it's done with wisdom and love. It's recognizing that I can't be everything to everyone, and that's okay. God never asked me to carry every opportunity. He asked me to be faithful to the assignments He has given me. When our identity is rooted in Christ instead of in pleasing people, we become free to say yes to what God is calling us to and no to the things that don't fit our current season. That's not unkind. It's just being a good steward of time, energy, and calling that God has entrusted to us. Another lesson that I've learned is that saying no doesn't require a lengthy explanation. We often feel like we have to defend our decision or convince someone that our reason is good enough. But a simple response is enough. Jesus said, let your yes be yes and your no be no. And sometimes wisdom looks like saying, I appreciate you thinking of me, but I can't commit to that right now, and leaving it there. This verse reminds me to be intentional with my commitments. If I say yes, I want it to be a wholehearted yes, not one that's filled with resentment or exhaustion. And if I need to say no, it's because it doesn't fit the season God has me in, and I can do that with kindness and confidence. The next point that I want to make is that if Jesus modeled rest, we should too. If the Son of God intentionally withdrew to pray and rest, why do we so often convince ourselves that we don't have time? God gave us the same 24 hours in a day. God wasn't surprised by the limits of our day. He intentionally created time with boundaries. So when we constantly say, I don't have time, maybe the question isn't whether we need more time, it's whether we need more wisdom in how we use the time we've been given. Paul writes in Ephesians chapter 5, verses 15 through 16, look carefully then how you walk, not as unwise, but as wise, making the best use of the time because the days are evil. I love that he doesn't just tell us to use our time, he tells us to use it wisely. Wisdom isn't about filling every minute of the day. It's about discerning what God is asking us to do in this season and faithfully stewarding the time He's given us. We don't need to strive to do everything. We simply need to be faithful with what He's placed in front of us today. That means recognizing our season, having the courage to say no when necessary, and following Jesus' example by making room for rest. When we do, we're not just managing our calendars, we're cultivating lives that are deeply rooted in Christ and are able to bear lasting fruit. And don't underestimate the power of small, consistent moments with God. A rooted life isn't built in a day. It's cultivated through daily faithfulness. It doesn't have to be perfect, it just needs to be intentional. This week, instead of asking, how can I get more done? Ask the Lord, how can I faithfully steward the time you've given me today? Because a rooted life isn't built by doing more, it's built by faithfully walking with the one who orders our steps. If today's episode connected with you, I'd love for you to leave a review and share it with someone that would be blessed by hearing this message. And if you haven't already, join our Facebook group, Rooted Moms. The link is in the show notes. I will meet you back here next Monday as we dig into another root, distractions.
Did this episode speak with you? If it did, share it with a friend. Hey, Mama, how are you?
Well, the laundry isn't going to fold itself, so it's time for me to get back at it. See you next time, friend. Just remember to stay rooted, mamas.